I'm hearing the AEW portion of this for the first time or reading the show notes when you sent them this morning. I know about Warner Brothers Discovery splitting. I know how important, especially this Superman movie coming out on July 11th and the new DCU. That's what they're really banking on. And once I saw that James Gunn was taking over and, rebooting the entire DC universe, I was like, wow, brands like AEW and sinking money into those. I think right now they're going to throw everything into that movie division. And of course, the DCU TV shows like Peacemaker and other things that they're going to have. Where does AEW, I guess that's where we start. Where's AEW in the pecking order, in the priority list of this new company that's, WBD, but they're kind of splitting everything up?
Yeah, I think it should be known right now off the bat before I read any of this is that Warner Brothers Discovery is currently $37 billion with a B dollars in debt. Heavily in debt. So I think this is part of the reason why they're splitting the company in two, I guess. Was it like half a sports division? And let me just read the whole thing. This is from SE Scoops, by the way. Warner Brothers Discovery has made the decision to split into two companies in 2026, a move that will have major ramifications in entertainment. With AEW maintaining a strong relationship with Warner Brothers Discovery, fans have been wondering what this means for the All Elite promotion. Warner Brothers Discovery plans to split into two entities by mid-2026. The first, called Global Networks, will house TBS, TNT, Discovery Plus, and Bleacher Report, the current home of AEW's Dynamite and Collision. The division will be led by Gunnar, Wiedenfels, WBD's current chief financial officer. Now, this guy has apparently got a real reputation for cutting costs. Bear that in mind once again. The second company, Streaming and Studios, will include HBO, HBO Max, Warner Brothers Film and TV Production, and DC Studios. It will be led by David Zaslav, who is WBD's current president and CEO. And he's also the guy that Tony Khan often references as well when talking with Turner executives and WBD. So, that being said, it seems that that's not going to go under Zaslav. That's going to go under the chief financial officer who likes to cut costs.
That is never, ever a good sign when you have a financial person in charge of a creative product. That is not good because now you have, well, we talked about it. It was connected to the Ron Killings thing, the bean counters. Now you have a bean counter that's going to want to cut back on production, props, stunts. Maybe that's a good thing for AEW and get back to actually storytelling, as Dutch Mantel would always talk about the stories really draw. But when you look at this, there's somebody, and this has been a criticism of TKO and Endeavor with WWE, that they're not wrestling people. They don't understand the full scope of the creative process of wrestling.
Yeah, but they're turning a profit in their bean counters.
Yeah, but they could turn even more of a profit but they're going, I think WWE is going off of momentum, and that momentum may run out eventually. AEW, that momentum's long gone, and now they're going to look at everything with a fine-tooth comb. They're going to look at maybe this guy who's now the chief financial officer that's running the whole network as far as AEW is concerned. Maybe he's going to say, you need to cut roster people, you need to cut this. We're not going to subsidize the arenas anymore, because doesn't the network subsidize some of these TV arenas?
WBD has some stake in AEW, but it might be a relatively small one. Tony Khan has never confirmed.
Oh, you mean a percentage of the actual? They own a percentage of the company.
Of the actual company. Yeah, but we don't know the percentage. Tony Khan has never said it outright.
Well, I would say the proof is going to be pretty soon of how much they really do control AEW and everything else. $37 billion in debt. You don't know if they're just going to outright cancel AEW. That's been kind of like rumored in the past when this broke probably a few months ago, the rumors about it. Right now it's more of an official type thing. But man, they are going to push so hard. And Discovery Plus, of course, lots of subscriptions with Magnolia Network, with Ghost Adventures. There's tons of things that have been offloaded behind the paywall. So bringing value to the subscription model to compete with Disney Plus, Netflix, and other things, that's another question. Are they going to move this possibly from free TV to behind the paywall? Like, the future of AEW is very, very fluid right now, and maybe not in a great way.
It's funny that pretty much anyone who has an over-the-top streaming subscription service always lose tons and tons and tons of money, because basically it's one giant war of attrition to see who will survive. And I think basically no one has won. I mean, Disney was losing unbelievable, untold amounts of money, and I think they were looking to only just breaking even, like maybe this year or last year or something. And I don't think HBO Max has ever turned a profit. I don't think pretty much anything has. I doubt Paramount has. Netflix definitely has. We don't know if Prime has, probably has. But most, like Peacock's a massive money loser for NBC.
Yeah, and they paid a lot of money for the WWE network, and that's very confusing about where that lies with the Netflix deal. The thing, too, is Paramount is actually connected to Walmart Plus. If you get a Walmart Plus subscription, say, meaning deliveries and stuff, you can order online, they deliver, you get a free Paramount Plus subscription with that. So I don't know how much of a piece or how much the Waltons own part of like Paramount. Like, I mean, it's all kind of like down to like 4 or 5 major conglomerates at this point. The fact that WBD is splitting, they essentially still have the same owners in a way. They're just splitting the entities of the networks. But no matter what, wrestling is always going to be the redheaded stepchild of entertainment. If it's costing money, it's going to look at WCW. Time Warner took it over. It was drawing huge money and ratings at one point, and they didn't have the faith for that to come back. AEW didn't draw the WCW Nitro numbers during the 83 weeks. So what are we talking about? It could just be they're the dead weight, and it might not be a lot of money when you think about the $37 billion debt, but it makes the CEO look good because we're cutting. Give me another year. Give me another 3 years, 5 years, and I'll cut even more. And I don't want to see any of these people out of work. I hope that this survives. But, then again, with pro wrestling, who knows? AEW could end up on Fox, could end up on Amazon Prime. They're always hopping to different, networks and subscription services.
Yeah, I think for the most part, streaming and wrestling hasn't really worked out that well as far as Raw, because, their numbers going down on Netflix. Thing is, it depends on who you believe. If you believe Dave Meltzer, then they've basically lost 2/3 of their viewership going to Netflix, if you believe Dave Meltzer, which just seems ridiculous since they're still selling out arenas basically every single week, or at least selling huge amounts of tickets, but we don't know if that's due to momentum or whatever else it is. Other people have suggested, laughably, quite frankly, but who knows? Weirder things have happened. That HBO Max is getting AEW Dynamite an extra 500,000 views per week, which is also ridiculous, because that's basically what people are also claiming Netflix, Raw on Netflix gets in its entirety. We're not getting into a big viewership thing, because quite frankly nobody knows. But I'm going to give you Tony Khan quotes. He does what he should do in this respect. While he didn't give much away in the way of insight, Khan said, with both sides, we have great relationships with everybody at the top. He noted that WBD head David Zaslav put their deal together while Gunnar Wiedenfels, was very involved as the WBD chief financial officer. The two of them and Bruce Campbell really negotiated their most recent contract with AEW and myself and my team. So on both sides, we've got the great relationships, and both sides that really love AEW and have come to be great partners with AEW. So hopefully that is true for Tony and AEW. But the thing is, I also wanted to make mention is, man, they got a huge contract. It was worth like nearly $200 million a year, all told, with the value of the streaming deal and everything, pay-per-view streaming and everything. So I mean, they went above and beyond even the most optimistic of estimates, I guess, with their 3-year deal. But then by 2027, when it runs up, does a chief financial officer look at that and think, damn, we're paying $200 million a year for X amount of, return? Well,
the problem with that is you would think, okay, with the economy, with everybody tightening, you have $37 billion in debt or however much in 2027. But there's a premium. It seems like there's always going to be a premium, and that price is going to go up for live sports or live sports entertainment. The NFL is always going up, NBA, Major League Baseball, to the point where ESPN had to drop because they can't afford it anymore. But the price is still increasing with each passing year. The TV share, or as far as revenue share for the owners in the NFL, or you're talking about licensing deals. We thought the WWE could never break the previous record from Fox and USA when they went to Netflix. Well, what did they do? Because listen, there's a sucker born every minute. P.T. Barnum. Somebody's going to be a mark for this stuff and at least say, yes, Fox and Jacob Ullman couldn't do it. This person couldn't do it. This person on WBD couldn't do it. I can draw money with AEW and we'll pay them $500 million a year. Or $1 billion over however many years or how many. Here's my question. Let's back up for a second. What if this CEO says, okay, we're just canceling the contract. Here's your buyout. We're done. And I can save instantly $500 million, like instantly, and cut it. They're not going to think about, oh, what are the wrestling fans going to think? And we have to finish the storyline. No, they don't care. But is there a penalty if WBD says to AEW, no way, we're done? And will they pay that penalty and just let them go? Because you can put Law and Order SVU on and try about the same.
I'd watch it.
I watch it too. It's just on in the background. But those Law and Order like spinoffs in the main show will forever draw TNT, TBS, and any syndication consistent ratings. They're timeless. That is the most evergreen content you can have. So why, if I'm an executive, why am I even bothering, much less this dude's got a spiked bat in his back and I got to answer phone calls about, you think about that part, right?
You bring up a great point, is because pro wrestling in general is the worst of both worlds. Because although for some reason they've got executives snowed because they've got it more in like the sports end of things rather than scripted drama or whatever else it might be. Because, you know, people want sports for one reason. People watch it live. They watch it. 99% of people watch sports live. And therefore, people are way more likely to watch the advertising that goes along with it. Whereas wrestling in general has about the same live to pre-recorded ratio of watching as any scripted drama. There's about 70%. So they get paid sports rights, but they don't deliver that. And also because advertisers think that pro wrestling fans, they don't think anything of them really, or think very little of them, that it's hard to sell advertising on those shows as well. And the other thing that you just mentioned before is they're all first run and that's it. You don't replay wrestling. So it's like sports in the sense that you watch it once and you never see it again. Or, you know, unless you've got an archives like the network or on Max.
Well, here's my point about that wrestling, and we've talked about this before, and I've talked about it on the Russo show. The thing that's missing from wrestling that every other sport gets right is filling in the other 5 to 6 days a week with the human interest stories, with this guy's contract's coming up, this guy got a DUI, this happened. Do you know how they can fill it in? And they create storylines for NFL games, for NBA games. This guy's holding out. He's not coming to train. They have it down to a science with their own angles and storylines. 2 months. Where's Aaron Rodgers going? Is he going to sign with the Steelers? Is he going to retire? What's he going to do? That's been almost every year. And the guy before that was Brett Favre. Then training camp. Oh, Shedeur Sanders got pulled over 100 miles an hour. We got 3 days out of that for the talking heads. They can do such a better job in wrestling of hacks, but they can never release people outside of the wrestling bubble to talk about what's really going on. That's why channels like ours are successful, because they're reaching outside the wrestling bubble to see what the real objective take is, and not, well, I have to say something nice about this person because on one of the WWE shows, am I wrong? Or AEW will never give access to anybody to ever ask a hard question of Tony Khan. WWE does it too. But do you see what I mean? That's why wrestling will never grow as far as market mindset or anything like that, because they're always stuck in the same revolving door of everything.